homage to him, the exalted one, the enlightened one, the supremely awakened one, Buddham Saranam Gacchami, Dhammam Saranam Gacchami, Sangham Saranam Gacchami. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I go to the Dhamma for guidance. I go to the Sangha for guidance. Namo Kie Butsu. Namo Kie Ho. Namo Kie So. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Naman Namas, Naman Namas, Naman Namas, Naman Namas. Nagon Chosegan Ishimu Jodo Shigan Fumanzo Sefu Joshogak Gao Muryoko Fui Dai Seishu Fusai Shobingu Sefu Joshoga Gashi Jobundo Myosho Chojipo Kugyo Mishomon Sefu Joshoga Ryokujin Shonen Joe Shubongyo Shigumu Jodo Isho Tennishi Jinriki Endaiko Fushomu Saido Shoujo Sankumyo Kosai Shuyakunan Kaihi Chiegen Meshi Konmoan Heisoku Shoakudo Tsudan Zen Shumon Kosojo Manzok Iyoro Jippo Nichigan Shujuki Tenkon Pugen Ishu Kaihozo Koseku Dokuho Jodai Shuchu Seppo Shishiku Kuyo Issa 主特本元年心上万得意三害用女分無下地津断に不詳願学へり都市最小村志願や国家大戦の官の国書天人東鎮明家ナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブナマンダブがんにしくのく平等性祭の恩も大心往生非常に合唱。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。南無阿弥陀仏。
We rely upon Tathagata Amitabha with our whole heart for the enlightenment in the life to come, abstaining from all sundry practices and teachings and giving up the trust in our powerless self. We believe that the assurance of our rebirth comes at the very moment we entrust and we call the name Namo Amida Butsu in happiness and thankfulness. We also acknowledge gratefully the benign benevolence of our founder and the succeeding masters who have led us to believe in this profound teaching, and we do now endeavor to follow throughout our lives the way laid down for us. Namo Amida Butsu. Sensei will now give the adult Dharma message and then read the Ryogemon in Japanese. Sensei.
Please join me in Gassho. Faith arises when one is touched by the Buddha's compassion. 大悲に触れて信ずる心が生まれると、南蛮ダブス、南蛮ダブス、南蛮ダブス、南蛮ダブス。Hello, I'd like to continue with the adult message. So we see from the Venerable Count with a K that the importance of knowing our history by realizing how much has had to happen in order for us to be here today. There are many relevant terms to this to this Buddhist principle, one of them being the term goen, causes and conditions, which we don't nearly emphasize enough, I think, in this country. But we need to pay more attention to these causes and conditions, to the past, I think. And the term I want to focus on is mottainai, as was in the Dharma school class. in modern Japanese, this phrase "mottainai" means don't be wasteful. As in like eat all your food, otherwise it's mottainai, right? ご飯ちゃんと食べないともったいないよとか. That's what I usually find myself saying to my son every night when he doesn't eat his food. It's funny, he doesn't eat his rice, but he eats all his vegetables. And if me and him swap diets, I think it would be perfect. But that's the way it goes, I guess. But I would like to share with you uh, a little chart on mottainai. Can everybody see this? The Yeah, okay. where'd it go? So mottainai, the original word mottai, it means substantiality or permanence. It means like this kind of like solidified entity, if you will. And then nai means it's there is not. So in other words, there is no substantial entity that is separate from everything else. As such, everything is interdependent on one another. So the very famous Buddhist principle of interdependency is being kind of depicted here in Mottainai. So then it goes a little bit further. So just to repeat, there is no substantial entity that is separate from everything else. As such, everything is interdependent on one another. And because everything is interdependent on one another, it is such a wonder how this can come about, such as our life, our parents, our connections to one another, the table, this table, the computer, the car that you drive, everything is created by an infinite number of causes and conditions. And for that, we should be grateful for the things that we have and are given in this life. And that is why we should not treat things in vain or without care. We should treat all things with the utmost care. Hence, we should not be wasteful. Right? And so the modern Japanese usage of the phrase mottainai takes this entire Buddhist explanation and throws that out and then goes with the conclusion and just says, don't be wasteful, okay? Mottainai, right? But the explanation coming before it is extremely important, and it comes from a Buddhist teaching, okay? So moving on then, because everything relies on everything then the topic gets a little bit more involved or complicated. That means then that there is no substantial self that can be extracted from everything else. If we take that further, what that means then is that there is no soul, okay? And this is a very important point in Buddhism. We don't subscribe to a concept of a soul. And I know what you're thinking. What? No soul? Blasphemy, right? But that's right. The way we think that way is because we're in this country, right, that is very heavily influenced by Judeo-Christian values. But this, if we look at Buddhism, that is what Shakyamuni Buddha was trying to teach us. The self or the soul that we think is separate and independent, this independent autonomous entity, apart from everything else, is the great delusion according to Buddhism, okay? So this term in Japanese is known as shoho muga. All things are no self, shoho muga. There is no substantial self. Also keep in mind, I'm very well aware of the fact that there was a movie that just came out called Soul, which is really good. But I have my thoughts on this issue, but it doesn't matter. It's just, please enjoy the movie. It's a very good movie, I think. So please watch that if you might have the chance to. So then, the question then becomes, are we one with everything then? What does that mean? Because I certainly don't feel that way. When I wake up in the morning, right? I feel like I'm the only one doing that, right? When I eat, I feel like I'm the only one doing that, right? When I have these thoughts about myself, I feel like I'm the only one thinking these thoughts. So, and then going on, when I feel like, I'm getting mad and I want to punch certain political leaders in the face, I certainly don't feel like I'm one with that person, right? So what does this no self, everything is dependent on everything, mean exactly? What does that mean? Well, that means that while we live, we do believe and we feel that we are separate from everything else. But the key is to remember and understand that the true principle of all reality is that everything is interconnected through and through. And I don't mean interconnected like as in, let's all hold hands and sing Kumbaya, or, we are the world, We are the future. Not like that, right? I mean interconnected as in on a cellular and molecular level and beyond that, right? From macro to micro, we are all absolutely and inherently interconnected. The cup of coffee and the brand that you decided to buy affects the world economy. Your life and the decisions you make as an American has implications in the Middle East and the struggle between Israel and Palestine, India and Pakistan, North and South Korea, Taiwan and China, China and Japan, etc., etc. The gasoline you buy, again, impacts the world. And I'd like to kind of give another kind of, well, a little bit of a morbid example, but I want to do this to kind of make a point. The drug trade in America regarding cocaine and heroin being trafficked into this country. You know, we try to find who is at fault here, who is to blame here. Well, there isn't any one single party that is at fault here. But if we think that the South American countries are at fault for producing the drugs, we are just scratching the surface. If there is no demand, there will be no supply. The demand is coming from America and Americans. And we are very much a part of this problem, we as in this country, right? So we need to have social services that provide and assist in drug education and drug prevention, as opposed to draconian measures of punishment, which don't really rehabilitate those who are addicted. Our life impacts everything around us. And this is why we have such an immense responsibility when we live. Uh, Not to overburden you with worries or anything, but it is to put things into perspective, right? We are not living in our own little corners on this side of the world. We really do impact way more than we believe we are doing. It's much easier to see that in today's day and age, when we have all these technologies that help us to see and measure our influences around the world. For example, like YouTubers and TikTok and Facebook, right? Whatever we post can be seen by the world. We impact the world in so many different ways. But the Buddha was actually teaching us this point 2,500 years ago, before TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and all this stuff, right? Before the telephone, the postal service, right? Or any of these things. We affect everything around us, and we are being affected by everything around us. Our very identity is being formed by what we believe we are, as well as what we believe we are not. If you are a Democrat or have views that lean Democratic, you are informed of your identity by what you are not. Chances are you would be against Mitch McConnell and Ted Cruz, etc., right? On the flip side to that, if you identify as a Republican, you are informed of your identity as a Republican by what you stand for, but what you believe you are not. So people like AOC and Bernie Sanders, people whom you disagree with, are nevertheless informing who you are. So we have to keep in mind then, as Buddhists, that although we have our identities, we also have to understand that we are all in this together, enemies and friends alike. Our enemies, the people that we dislike, the people that we even grow to hate, help to create who we are. They too become our teachers in the end. And I know it's so hard to put our hands together and gusto to these people, especially with all of our pride and ego. And I will be the first to admit that. But in the end, everyone becomes our teachers of life. And for that, we have to be able to put our hands in gassho. This is what the Buddha teaches us. So this constant kind of bickering we see on the news, on the one hand, it's necessary, right? But on the other, it's toxic and detrimental to our spiritual health. In the end, we have to remember that everyone is embraced within Amida Buddha's infinite wisdom and compassion. So we must try, at least, to show our compassion towards others, because this is to be in accordance to the truth, as the Buddha explains to us. So then, if we do not subscribe to a soul, what then do we subscribe to? If a non-Buddhist person was to come up to you and say, if no soul, then what is there? What makes you, you? The answer to that is life. Right? Life is a series of experiences stringed together. They are like the beads of your onenju, right? Each bead is a moment, and what strings them together is great life, or Amida Buddha, right? This string, which is true reality. But it is very hard to see this string. Imagine that you're one of these beads of the onenju. What is in front of you, and what's behind you? Right, a bead. Beads, and nothing but beads, right? We don't see this string that's going through all of us. Um, so the string connects all the beads together. What is that string, you might ask? It is great life. It is Amida Buddha. Amida Buddha is great life because it doesn't just connect the beads of one life together, it connects all the beads of all lives of all eternity together. It makes one huge onenju that spans throughout the universe and beyond. We are all part of this one giant onenju. The string is Amida Buddha, but it's very hard to see and awaken to that string. But it's there. And how do we know that? How do we know that string is there? We know this because there is a large bead that tells us it has seen the string. It is not a bead that is us. It is a bead called the Buddha, or the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha. Shakyamuni Buddha tells us the truth and what this truth means. He tells us that there is a string that connects all sentient beings together, and that we are a part of a greater reality that is much more than just who we think we are. Shakyamuni Buddha tells us there is a string of Amida, and he shares us this story through the Pure Land Sutras. It is what we chant at our Sunday services. These sutras might be a different language, but they are the words of the holy teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. So today I was kind of meaning to talk about, Mottai Nai, and it was supposed to be a topic that was a little bit lighter in content, but I ended up talking about like the soul, right? And then the Buddhist understanding of this, what the soul means. But I wanted to address this issue because I think that we grow up in a society that is heavily influenced by our Judeo-Christian brothers and sisters, right? And although we may take part in the cultural aspects of such events like Christmas or Easter and these kinds of things, we still have to remember that Buddhism is a 2,500-year-old religious tradition, right? And we have our views too. We need to reaffirm what those are, right? And we need to keep in mind that we are a religion, right? We are not some kind of self-help, let's try this religion out during our college years, free-spirited, believe whatever we want, hippie religion that some aspects of popular culture wants us to be, right? This is a religious tradition where we put our trust and faith in the Buddha, and with that, it entails that we take to heart what the Buddha Dharma asks us to do, which is to reflect on this life. Right? So with that, I would like to end today's talk. I know it was kind of short, but I wanted to talk about Mottai Nai and what that, and the Buddhist kind of definition of Mottai Nai is. Let's live reflecting on the string of Amida Buddha that connects all lives together in the principle of infinite wisdom and compassion. Okay, please take care. Jonin Gasho. Faith arises when one is touched by the Buddha's compassion. Daihi ni furete shinzuru kokoro ga umareru. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, I'd like to move on to the Ryogemon, which is in Japanese. Ryoge, Tsugon, Moro Moro no Zogyo Zashu, Jiriki no Kokoro o Furi Sutete, 一心に阿弥陀如来我らが今度の一大事のご承恩助けそうらえと頼み申して候頼む一年の時往生一条恩助け事情と存じ この上の称名は、ご恩報者と存じ、喜び申し候。この恩断り、弔問申し訳候こと、ご解散承認ご出世のご恩、次第相乗の全知識の朝からざるご関係のご恩と、ありがたく存じ候。この上は定めを課せらるる恩をきて、一号限り守り申すべく候。ナワンナナワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワンナスタワン